Oh, it's true. It's damn true. It's Kurt Angle on the True Geordie Podcast. True Geordie, a YouTuber, a big burly Scotsman or Irishman, something like that. I don't know. I can't tell the difference between your accents. Don't get mad at me. Sounds the same. I mean, I can't tell the difference between a British accent or an Australian accent really either. So it just is what it is. It all sounds the same to me. But we had Kurt Angle on the True Geordie Podcast. True Geordie has had other wrestlers on in the past, but it's more of an eclectic podcast. He's had Jericho on in the past, and somebody else I'm thinking of too, but I don't remember off the top of my head. But he's definitely a wrestling fan, and he sat down and he had a fun little conversation with our Olympic gold medalist. A lot of this was just kind of the same shit that's been talked about by Kurt Angle in multiple interviews. You know, we just had him on Joe Rogan not that long ago, and he talked about a lot of the same exact shit. So there wasn't a lot of new takeaways from this episode, but there was one thing in particular that did pique my interest and made my ears percolate a little bit, and that's when Kurt Angle started talking about Chris Benoit. And it was credit to True Geordie here for asking the question. You know, Kurt was talking about some of his best matches or favorite matches, and he name dropped Benoit, and Geordie had a good follow-up. Hey, man, a lot of people don't really talk about Chris Benoit anymore. He's kind of, you know, persona non grata, if you will. But why do you drop his name still? Kurt Angle had an interesting answer, and it deserves some thought. Check out this clip.
I will tell you, the reason why I keep Chris Benoit's legacy going is because I have my best matches with him. If I pretend like he didn't exist, I pretend that I didn't exist. Because my greatest match is 2003 Royal Rumble against Chris Benoit for the WWE Championship. Iron Man match against Chris Benoit. We had WrestleMania 17 match against Chris Benoit. You name it. Black Backlash pay-per-view against Benoit. I have my best matches with Benoit. And if I don't recognize Chris Benoit, I'm not recognizing myself, because they were literally my best matches. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. I had some great matches with Shawn Michaels and Brock Lesnar and Undertaker and Rock and Triple H and Stone Cold. But you know, for me, Benoit was the guy because he reminded me of me. When he got in there, he was an intense technical master that knew everything about wrestling, and him and I meshed really well in the ring. And I was always excited to wrestle him, but I always knew it was going to be hard because he matched my intensity. He was able to step it up a level and stay with me, and no other wrestler has been able to do that.
That's a fascinating take. That's not something that I ever really considered with Chris Benoit. You think about it, and Chris Benoit has this legacy in professional wrestling as one of the all-time greats, and unfortunately, he also has this legacy in professional wrestling of maybe being the most evil, or at least doing the most evil deeds that any man could ever do, you know. Family annihilator. Oof. That's some heavy shit. Now, there's people out there that will, you know, there's a strong contingency of people out there on the internet that are supporters of Chris Benoit for the WWE Hall of Fame. Every year you hear, you know, can we get Benoit in there now? Can we get Benoit in there now? I think for a large majority of those people, it's the idea that they can just kind of separate the art from the artist. You know, that's not always easy for everybody to do. But for example, I mean, it's something that I do. I'm pretty comfortable with. You know, I can watch a Chris Benoit match without, you know, raging or having an existential crisis about what he did. I can separate the two, the man and the tragic events of his and his family's passing, from his body of work in the ring. Same with Michael Jackson, right? I mean, we all do this to some extent, don't we? I mean, Michael Jackson, you're not going to stop listening to Billie Jean or fucking Thriller. Cause you're not going to stop listening to that just because Michael Jackson may or may have not diddled with little kids or whatever, but his music is so good that we put that aside. We won't forget about it, but we just take that hat off while we're listening to the music and we go, that's my jam. We don't talk about what he did. This is separate. This is the music. So I get that perspective for Chris Benoit, you know. But some people, that's a little bit too heavy. You know, you can't, some people can't cross that line. He did this shit and now we're just going to never talk about him again, never watch anything he ever did again. But the problem with that is that Benoit was rather successful in professional wrestling. And, you know, things like a WrestleMania 20 main event. WrestleMania should be an all-time, WrestleMania 20 should be an all-time iconic, memorable, historical event. 20 years after the original, back in Madison Square Garden, star-studded like a motherfucker. Every match was a banger. This was so star-studded that you had The Rock and Mankind versus Batista, Randy Orton, and Ric Flair in a 2-on-3 handicap match, just somewhere sprinkled on early in the card, like match number 2, 3, just in there somewhere, just in the mix. That's how big of an event this was, and it was main evented by Chris Benoit winning the World Heavyweight Championship, and then that hugging moment with Eddie, that should be iconic. That should stand the test of time. That should be in the highlight reels for years to come. Every WrestleMania. But it has to be swept under the rug because of what Chris Benoit did. But in Kurt Angle's case, he, as he said, had some of his best matches with Benoit. He stands behind those matches. He's proud of those matches. And if he never talks about those matches, he's not only erasing Benoit from wrestling history, which is one thing, but he's erasing himself from wrestling history to a certain extent. His accomplishments, some of his goals, you know, some of his biggest achievements, his most proudest moments. When your favorite match is with a guy that nobody can talk about, what do? You just never talk about it again, or do you try to separate the two? I think the legacy of Chris Benoit will always be tainted. I don't think he'll ever end up in a Hall of Fame. I think you guys got to get over that. The people out there that think that, you know, Benoit someday, somehow will just find his way onto the WWE Hall of Fame after enough time or something. You know, for the most part, like I said, it's the people that are able to separate the man from the work and want to honor the work. Though there are definitely a few sickos out there that I've come across that just want to honor Chris Benoit because the crippler, you know what I'm saying? Like, maybe not. Maybe let's not do that. You know, we don't know what happened in those last moments. Everybody that ever talks about Benoit, you know, always said he was a little weird, a little off, a little intense maybe, but not a murderer. So, you know, clearly he snapped somewhere in that time frame. You know, mental health, man. Mental health. But I don't blame Kurt Angle for keeping this part of his legacy and for bringing it up. And I wanted to share that with you because it was a really interesting perspective. And I've never really heard anybody talk about Chris Benoit in that context of their own personal body of work. And how just blacking out Chris Benoit kind of blacks out a lot of other people's history as well, too. Like Triple H and Shawn Michaels had a banger of a triple threat match with Benoit. That can never be, they're never even going to show a highlight of that match. It's sad. Triple H versus Shawn Michaels in the main event of a WrestleMania. Add Chris Benoit. I'll never forget the day I heard Chris Benoit. I was living with a buddy, college years, you know, and I come home, set the keys on the counter. And he's like, bro, Chris Benoit. I was like, no. I think I jumped on YouTube when YouTube was in its early days still. Crazy shit, but I'm going to go ahead and leave it there. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Do you think that Benoit, because of what he did, should never, ever, ever be mentioned again, no matter what context, no matter how good of a body of work that he had or who worked with him? Or do you think that we should try to separate the art from the artists and still try to be able to appreciate Chris Benoit's matches, his body of work in the ring, and not hold that, keep that separate from what he actually did in his personal life? Are you one of those people that think he should be in the Hall of Fame? If so, I'd like to hear why. I won't judge you. I'm not going to rip on you or nothing, but I want to hear your thoughts. How do you justify why a Chris Benoit deserves to be in the Hall of Fame? Is it as simple as just because of his body of work? Or are you just, is that your kink? Is that what you're into? I don't fucking know. Let me know in the comments below. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next.
Oh yeah, thanks for checking out the video. Yeah, don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like it if you liked it. Yeah, and you can check out full episodes each and every Sunday right here on the channel. Oh yeah, dig it.